Hello, esteemed viewers. Welcome back to Faith Meets Politics. Today, I want you guys to be very tuned in to the subject that we're going to talk about, okay? Because today, we're diving deep into a controversial yet important topic. What's that topic? The history of Planned Parenthood and why so many Christians and conservative Republicans strongly oppose its existence. We're going to explore its origins, its core operations, and the reason it has become such a divisive institution in America. Now, stick with me because this is a story everyone, and I mean everyone, needs to understand, okay? So let's do a little bit of history here. In order to understand Planned Parenthood, we need to go back to the 20th century, a time when women's reproductive health options were severely, yes, you heard right, severely limited, and conversations, believe it or not, about birth control were largely considered a taboo. In 1916, a woman by the name of Margaret Sanger, she was a nurse and an activist, took a radical step by opening the first birth control clinic, guess where? In Brooklyn, New York. This marked the humble beginning of what we know to be the Parenthood Federation of America. Now, Sanger was driven by a desire to help women gain control over their reproductive lives. At this time, many women had few choices and often faced repeated pregnancies, many of which jeopardized their health and well-being, unfortunately. Now, Sanger saw contraception as a way to alleviate this burden and help women gain autonomy. But, and there's a but, Sanger's story isn't without its darker chapters. Her work was deeply intertwined with eugenics movement, a now discredited pseudoscientific ideology that sought to improve the human race by controlling reproduction. Eugenics promoted practices such as forced sterilization, often targeting, hear this well, minority groups, the poor and others that were deemed unfit to reproduce. Sanger herself made troubling statements about population control, including targeting vulnerable communities. Now, for example, right, in her writings and speeches, she framed birth control as a tool for addressing poverty and social issues. But her language often carried the undertone of eugenics. Now, to this day, her legacy casts a long shadow over Planned Parenthood, raising questions about the organization's motivation and ethics. Now, despite these controversies, Planned Parenthood grew rapidly, unfortunately, but it did grow rapidly throughout the 20th century. By the 1950s and 1960s, it had become the leading provider for reproductive health services in the United States. Hear me well on this. The organization expanded its offerings to include birth control, cancer screening, STD testing, and eventually abortion services. The turning point came in 1973 with the Supreme Court's landmark decision in Roe v. Wade, which legalized abortion nationwide. Planned Parenthood became the number one key player in abortion services, framing the procedures as a fundamental part of women's health care. For many, the organization represented progress in the fight for women's rights. However, critics argue that this focus on abortion has overshadowed other aspects of its work. Planned Parenthood claims that abortion accounts for a small percentage of its services. BS, all right? Because pro-life advocates point out that it performs hear these numbers, hundreds and thousands of abortions annually, more than any other organization in the country. This role has catapulted Planned Parenthood into the center of America's culture wars. While its supporters praises it as a champion of women's health, its critics view it as a symbol of moral decline and disregard for human life. For many Christians, opposition to Planned Parenthood is deeply rooted in the faith and in our faith and the Bible. The Bible emphasizes the sanctity of human life, affirming that each person is created in the image of God. For example, let's go into passages like Psalms 139, verses 13 to 16. It celebrates the miracle of life, declaring that God knits us together in our mother's womb. This worldview shapes the belief that life begins at conception and that every unborn child is a unique, valuable individual. Abortion, which ends life, annihilates it, is seen as a violation for Christians when it comes down to moral values. Okay, now supporting an organization like Planned Parenthood, which performs significant portions of the nation's abortion, is viewed as incompatible with living out a biblical worldview. In addition to their theological objections, Christians often highlight the emotional and spiritual toll abortion can take on women. That's right, emotional and spiritual toll. Many women experience regret, guilt, and emotional pain after undergoing an abortion. Pro-life activists argue that these women need compassion, support, and alternatives, not organizations that profit from their difficult decisions. And they do profit, and we're going to get into it how, okay? Planned Parenthood often frames abortion as a matter of choice and freedom, but Christians counter that true freedom comes from honoring God's design for life and family. They advocate for a culture that values every life, born and unborn. That's what us Christians believe, and offers real support to women in crisis. While the opposition of conservative Republicans often overlaps with Christian values, it also includes economic and political concerns. A major point of contention is the significant taxpayer funding Planned Parenthood receives over $500 million annually in recent years. Although federal law prohibits these funds from directly paying for abortions because it prohibits it, critics argue that this financial support frees up other resources for Planned Parenthood to expand its abortion services. This raises questions about accountability. Now, numerous investigations have scrutinized Planned Parenthood's practices, including allegations. Brace yourself for this one, okay? Brace yourself. Allegations that it illegally sold fetal tissue for profit. Although Planned Parenthood denies these claims, they have fueled calls for greater oversight and defunding of the organization. Conservatives also view Planned Parenthood as a part of a broader cultural shift away from traditional family values. By promoting abortion, contraception, and comprehensive sex education, often without a focus on abstinence, Planned Parenthood is seen as encouraging a culture of sexual permissiveness, okay? Now, critics argue that this contributes to a breakdown of societal norms, increasing rates of unplanned pregnancies, STDs, and family instability. And we have a lot of family instability in America. From a policy perspective, defunding Planned Parenthood is seen as a way to redirect resources toward organizations that align with pro-life values, such as crisis pregnancies centers, adoption agencies. One of the most contentious aspects of Planned Parenthood's operation is its impact on minority communities. Hear these numbers really, really closely, okay? Around 79% of its abortion facilities are located near predominantly Black or Hispanic neighborhoods. That's right, you heard that correctly. Critics argue this is no coincidence, pointing to Margaret Sanger's eugenic legacy as evidence of systemic targeting. Statistics reveal a troubling disparity. African American women account for a disproportionately high percentage of abortion in the United States. Pro-life activists describe this as a modern-day form of genocide, arguing that it deprives minority communities of future generations and perpetuates cycles of poverty and disadvantage. Now, supporters of Planned Parenthood argue that it provides essential health care to underserved communities. But opponents question whether this justifies the loss of so many lives. And there are so many lives, innocent lives, that are lost with abortion. They call for a greater investment in programs that address root causes of poverty and provide genuine support for women and families. This debate underscores the broader ethical questions surrounding Planned Parenthood. Now, this question is to you. Is it truly serving the needs of these communities, or is it profiting from their vulnerability to provide a balanced perspective? It's important to address the argument of Planned Parenthood's defenders. Now, many argue that the organization plays a vital role in providing affordable, that word again, healthcare to millions of women, particularly those in low-income communities. Its services extend far beyond abortion, including cancer screenings, contraception, and education on reproductive health. Now, supporters also highlight the importance of choice in a free society. They argue that women should have the right to make decisions about their own bodies, including the choice to terminate a pregnancy. I'm taking a deep, every time I hear that word abortion, it just takes my breath away. Okay. Planned Parenthood represents empowerment and progress, so they say. Critics, however, challenge these claims. They point out that federally qualified health centers and other community health providers outnumber Planned Parenthood clinics and can offer similar services without performing abortions. That's right, alternatives that will save lives. Okay, now this raises a question. Is Planned Parenthood truly indispensable, or can its role be fulfilled by other organizations? So, what's the solution, you may ask? For Christians and conservatives, the ultimate goal is to create a culture that values life at every stage. This involves both policy changes and grassroots efforts to support women, families, and unborn children. I'll break down 5 conservative right-wing Republicans can make to change. 5 things that we can do to change all this, okay? Now, number 1, hear me well, defunding Planned Parenthood. Many taxpayer paid dollars should not support organizations that perform abortions. Redirecting this funding to community health centers and pro-life organizations could expand access to comprehensive health care without compromising pro-life values. Number 2, hear this one, expanding crisis pregnancy centers. That's right, you heard right, okay? These centers provide free resources, counseling, and support for women facing unplanned pregnancies. By offering alternatives to abortion, they empower women. This is real empowerment, okay? To choose life, which is so precious. Number 3, promoting adoption. Although, adoption is a life-affirming option that provides children with loving families and gives women an alternative to abortions. That's right, there's always an alternative to abortion. You don't have to snuff out the unborn. Number 4, advocating for family policies. Strengthen family structures through policies that support marriage, parental leave, and childcare can reduce the need for abortion by addressing its root causes. Number 5, education and outreach, which is very important. Okay, changing hearts and minds requires compassionate dialogue and education about the sanctity of life and the resources available to women in need. In conclusion, Planned Parenthood's history is complex and often troubling, very troubling, okay? While it claims to champion women's health, its deep ties to abortion, eugenics, and questionable practice makes it a deeply divisive institution. For Christians and conservatives, the fight against Planned Parenthood is not just a political battle. It's a moral and spiritual one, okay? But the path forward isn't just about opposing Planned Parenthood. It's about building a culture that values life, supports women, and honors God's design for family. By working together, we can create a society where every life is cherished and protected. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching. And I encourage you to continue doing your research, okay? Share this topic, share this channel, okay? Because truth matters. If you found this video informative, please like and subscribe. God bless and be well.